Mailbag. November 8, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. 1. Americans, both state nationals and state citizens, stand under public law. They do not stand under any private law at all. 2. An allodial title is still a title granted by a king or queen, and it means that the king or queen is the actual landlord and you are only being allowed possession of your assets by their whim. That whim can change. Americans own their land and soil as freeholders having allodium possession. No titles of any kind are involved. 3. Arbitration awards are being offered to anyone who wants to stand under the private king's law as a British territorial United States citizen. They don't tell you that the notes used to pay these awards are drawn against your credit and assets as an American. In other words, you are paying for these awards plus interest. They also don't tell you that adopting this political status and accepting this benefit makes you a subject of the Queen and the Pope. It also means that you cannot actually own land or other assets in your own country, but have to live as a tenant with a title and pay rent, tithes, and fees to the Queen and the Pope. 4. Americans are owed vast amounts of credit and assets under both Roman civil law and ecclesiastical law. The trustees in breach don't want to pay you, so they are trying to get you to accept federal citizenship, which gives them access to your assets and absolves them of responsibility. Both territorial United States citizens and municipal United States citizens are so deep in debt to Americans that they and their progeny will never see daylight, unless we forgive them and really put the money changers out of business. 5. The entire amount of the U.S. national debt has been embezzled and is owed as the American national credit. There is a great deal more owed to Americans. We have FDR on tape admitting that he collected 20,000 tons of privately owned gold from Americans that has never been paid back. Millions of tons of gold and precious metals were cashiered in the Philippines by the Scottish interlopers that infringed on our name and bankrupted their spin-off doppelganger corporation doing business as the United States of America Incorporated, in 1907. A good share of that gold belonged to us and we have the records. These same brigands bought the landmass of the Philippines using our money, and we have the receipts for that, and Alaska and Hawaii and a lot more besides. Suffice it to say, if you have a brain in your head and you are an American, you should do everything in your power to secure your birthright as an American and join your state assembly now. 6. So-called parse syntax is just the latest rerun of the Justinian deception, attempting to use dog Latin to defraud and misrepresent people. Russell Gould recovered our stolen property from pirates, but has now turned pirate himself and refuses to return our title IV flag and other purloined emblems. The law is very clear: possession by pirates does not change ownership. It could be the 10th generation of pirates in possession of our stolen property and it still would not ever be their property. So Gould is just another rat who had the chance to be a hero. 7. The Pope owns the municipal United States government directly and owns the British territorial United States indirectly, because the British Queen is his overseer of territorial and Commonwealth properties. This means that he can't foment a civil war here because he would be fighting against himself. The plotters tried to weasel around this in 1976 with the updating of the International Organizations Immunities Act, where the municipal government attempted to make it appear that they were donating our states and laws and offices to the United Nations, but in fact they were donating their own municipal holdings to the UN corporation. The Pope owns all this stuff, too. The incorporated governments that are members of the United Nations are all under charters belonging to the Holy See and subject to the Roman Curia. So, they can't start a civil war here using any United Nations as proxy, because again, the Pope owns and controls all parties concerned. He would be fighting against himself. 8. So all roads literally do lead to Rome, and all this misery, theft, and skullduggery lands firmly in the laps of the popes and the Roman Curia. Not the Queen. Not the United Nations. Not even the UN Corp. 9. We, our states and our people, belonging to the Federation of States doing business as the United States of America, were never any part of the so-called American Civil War. That mercenary conflict was fought by northern and southern states of states that were members of the Confederation formed under the Articles of Confederation, and the soldiers were mustered out as such. As a result, we are third-party civilians and we are owed every jot of good faith service and the protections and guarantees of the constitutions. 10. Americans are the employers of all these federal citizens. Stop petitioning your employees, for God's sake. Remember who you are. It is embarrassing to see people begging and groveling for fair treatment and common sense from men and women who are getting a corporate paycheck from them. Wake up and smell the Java. Tell your employees what to do and hound them and hold them accountable until they do. Better yet, give them a pink slip, and I am not talking about underwear. 11. The rule of law is not law. The rule of law refers to the processes and procedures of the courts, not any kind of actual law. Court rules are not law, and they are no substitute for law of any kind, public or private. Next time you hear someone prattling mindlessly about the rule of law, give them an education and tell them that you are owed actual law and justice, not the rule of law. 12. Americans are non-domestic with respect to federal districts and municipalities, and the municipalities have no right to exist on our shores. We are a foreign nation with respect to both the British territorial and papist municipal governments. That is why their code and their regulations refer to us as aliens and non-resident aliens. 13. Our American states are nations, literally 50 separate countries. That is why a political map of the United States shows 50 different colored states with different names instead of one big single colored plot like you see when you look at Brazil or France. If you never thought about these things before, think about them now. 14. A jural assembly is only a part of a state assembly, and without a state assembly it has no standing and is about as useful as a car door without a car. The same goes for grand juries, which are only part of a jural assembly. Please, people, get your heads screwed on and think. There is a logic to be observed. American grand juries are formed by jural assemblies and jural assemblies are formed by state assemblies. So get the horse in front of the cart, form your state assemblies and go from there. Build the whole structure needed and stop bickering and being misled and wasting time. 15. Don't believe any stories about someone going to save you. You have to act to save yourselves. Self-governance is hard, precise, and demanding work, and you really are the one responsible for doing it. The Pope and the Queen have been governing for you and serving themselves for the past 150 years. The loathsome snake pits in Rome, New York, London, Washington, Hong Kong and elsewhere are the result. If you want to live in this increasingly horrific land of Oz, do nothing and the violence will just continue until the whole world is destroyed. And most of us with it. If you want a return to sanity and peace and public law, you have to get on your feet and push. Nobody can do your job for you. 16. The latest excuse for doing nothing is to sit around and wait for the outcome of the next presidential election. Well, I got news for you all. Our presidential office, President of the United States of America, is vacant. And that is the actual power holder office. We can't just sit on our thumbs and wait another year for our foreign federal employees to get their internal goulash sorted out and sit around and worry about their druthers. We have to get our own ducks in order, and if Donald Trump doesn't enter the actual power holder office, we still have to get our ducks in order. Now. 17. Upsetting elections has also been used as the excuse used not to go ahead and blow the lid on Spygate and the Federal Reserve and the abduction, rape, torture, and mutilation of our children by these beasts from the Black Lagoon. And that is just more BS. The time to fight crime is always right now, and there is no other time. Now is what we've got. I have a war room with over 100 names and faces and at least 24 organizations all involved in the Russian collusion debacle, not counting the new manure pile created by Crooked Joe the billion Biden. You know what is conspicuously missing from the rogues gallery? There isn't a single Russian. Not one. In fact, the only foreign government in the whole pile of horse hooey is the British government. Big surprise, right? Just like I have told you all from day one. We are looking at another British dog pile and nothing else. Just a huge cock and bull story designed to distract attention from the actual news and cause trouble for Donald Trump. The perps are crooks and perverts, and I hope the advertisers all see the latest stats on loss of viewership by the mainstream media. Remember when everyone always watched the evening news? Always? Well, thanks to their worse than useless disservice to us and our airwaves, only 1 in 75 Americans is listening to the news anymore. Just because Obama legalized propaganda doesn't mean we like it or can't recognize it for what it is. So, up yours, Mother Jones. Down the hatch. NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, Washington Compost, NYC Birdcage Liner, et al. I once recommended busting the media conglomerates for restraint of trade and monopoly activity, but it looks like they are self-destructing and all it will take are a few well-placed lawsuits to finish them off. But, meanwhile, the gritty American Fourth Estate is resurrecting. Go get yourself a subscription to the Epic Times at www.readepic.com, and remember how it feels to read a newspaper again. Links to this article and more can be found in the video description box.